I don't often make long form videos these days. Who wants to pay attention? But this one is important. And if you are involved in a lifestyle change, you want to improve your life. One of the things that gets in the way of a lot of folks is what I call the I messed up syndrome. It's important for us to understand that guilt and shame are always destructive. You know, if I feel guilty, I'm inclined sometimes to hide it or to spill my guts when unnecessarily sometimes. If I'm feeling shame, then guilt says, okay, I did that. Shame, on the other hand, says there's something wrong with me. And I think a lot of my clients confuse the two, and almost it's like there's some Venn diagram that just pulls these two, makes them overlap a lot. So let me give you an example. The other day I had a client who came in, and we're working on weight loss and diabetes control. And one of the things that we do is we sort of cut down on carbohydrates and sugar. All right, because sugar's a carbohydrate, right? So we sort of cut down on that to gain control, and it's all about insulin resistance. But he came in and he said, I was bad this week. And first of all, defining yourself as bad is usually a bad sign. Okay. But he said, I was bad this week. And I said, well, what do you mean you were bad? And he said, I had a donut. And of course, I made a big deal out of it. I went, "Oh, you!" And I'm being facetious. I'm being really over the top. You had a donut, and I'm laughing, and he could hear it through my voice. I'm laughing. He could hear it, but I'm overacting, right, about this donut. And I said, all right, okay, so you had a donut. Now you and we both know that no one ever needs a donut. But what happened here, right? Whether he was in an environment where somebody brought donuts into work and they were tempting, or he was driving past a donut store and couldn't resist, who knows? Who knows? It's what's done is done, right? I had a donut. So I asked him, I said, so, all right, what was going on? He told me it was, you know, basically a craving that he gave into. And that's what I said. I said, so you gave into a craving. What happened then? Now, here's the thing. He said, I felt so bad. I had two more. That's where we work, right? Because, okay, you had a donut. It was what it was. And we could say in many cases, it is what it is because of how you perceived what it was. And so he felt guilty, so he had two more donuts. Notice he didn't say, I had three donuts. Even in his own mind, he separated them. They were different donuts. I don't mean, one was glazed and the other one was frosted or whatever. But they were different. Those donuts had a different quality, but both of them had something to do with how he was feeling, a response to an emotion, and what was going on in his head, that self-hypnosis automatic monologue that goes on. And it is self-hypnosis, by the way. You can talk yourself into almost anything. I can't talk you into things like that. As a hypnotist, I can't do it, but you can do it to yourself, left, right, center. So, I we need to look at what was happening for that first donut. I was having a bad day. I was stressed. Okay, so it was what it was. And then you interpreted what it was, and it became two more donuts. It is what it is. And it's not about blame. Look, it was what it was, and we can't do anything about that. So, that whole idea of guilt and shame, I mean, is it possible that it motivates you to improve? Or do they motivate you to believe in your own failure? Guilt and shame are negatives. Okay, I messed up. That doesn't mean I continue to mess up thinking that it's going to get any better. So it was what it was. And right now, it is what it is. And the only thing we can do in terms of what it is right now is to move forward with the intention that we're moving towards something, not away from something, not away from donuts or treats or emotional eating. Those, of course, we don't want those. But the truth is, at the end of the day, we're moving towards something. I'm moving towards a guilt-free life. I'm moving towards not being ashamed of who I am, and or even really guilty for what I've done. Guilt, in the religious world, the Christian world, they talk about repentance. But repentance isn't just saying, I messed up and I'm sorry. And I don't mean to preach. You don't have to listen to this part if it offends you. But it's really about, okay, I acknowledge that that was not a wise choice at the time. It may have been the only one I thought possible, like, I need a donut. Of course, we know that no one does. But it's like, all right, so I'm going to become aware as I move forward, as I'm in my is what it is day to day, because you always are. When I am confronted with those situations, I'm going to now be aware of what that donut can do to me. And maybe I'll make a better choice if it happens in the future. And I leave it to if. Because there comes a point in your change when you realize there's nothing, that those old things don't matter anymore. So the I messed up syndrome. So I had a donut, so I had two more, right? So a dozen. And it's all going on in your head, right? You're beating yourself up. I was bad. Don't beat yourself up. I'm not telling you not to acknowledge that something you did hurt someone, for example. All right, I said something that was mean, and maybe I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try not to do that again because I don't like the me that was. And I can tell you that never ends. That never ends. It's like I'm 65 and I still have moments where I see something in myself that I don't like. And it's okay for me to acknowledge that I don't like it. It's not okay for me to label myself as bad because of it. Because if I label myself as bad, then what's there to fight for? What's there to stand up for? So in my work with my clients, even if it's not, normally it's often weight loss and diabetes management, metabolic disease. But even if it's not that, it could be anything. It was what it was. Can't do anything about it. Can't rewrite history. Reinterpret it. We can see that our decisions were made in a context and for a reason, and whether we now judge that reason as good or bad, it's only hindsight. At the time, we were doing what we thought would work, or so watch it. Be careful. Don't beat yourselves up. Don't label yourself as bad, and see that while there are consequences to the past, we can begin to rectify them by moving forward. I hope this helps.